I am Grady Byrne with the CapeCon.com News Center. This is Sunday Journal. I'm joined today by a special guest who is an author with a new book that has just came out. Do you mind introducing yourself for our listeners?
Hi, Grady. Thanks for having me. My name is Kristan Higgins, and A Little Ray of Sunshine is my 23rd book set in beautiful Wellfleet, Massachusetts.
This is a lovely book about particularly motherhood, but it does feature a lot of local locations. And as we went through already a little bit off camera, there's a lot of local landmarks that make an appearance, as well as a lot of local culture, to say the least. Do you mind telling us a little bit more about You've already mentioned this isn't your first foray into book writing, to novel writing. Do you mind elaborating a little bit more about your previous experiences?
Yeah, I started writing when my kids were little toddlers, and my very first book was set in Eastham, where my family has had a home for many decades. And there's, of course, everyone who doesn't live on the Cape feels like the Cape is the absolute best place to live in the world. There's something really magical about places that you spent as a child, I think, too. And so I love small towns. I live in a small town in Connecticut, and I spend about a third of my time now on the house on the Cape.
And as you did mention, that is in Eastham. I will just be on record. It is the best town of Cape Cod in the island. No thanks here as a local Eastham resident. But that is interesting. So people write what they know, so they say. And you spend a lot of time on Cape, and you said that you've also lived and worked here for a variety of time. Do you mind talking more about the professions, what you've been doing in terms of like what you did working here before?
Well, yeah, I was a waitress and a motel cleaner when I was in college, and that kind of classic experience of living somewhere with 10 other kids in college, and all of us working in hospitality in some way or another. And it gave me a lot of respect for the food service and hospitality industry. I am a great tipper as a result of that. And it also gave me the opportunity to spend an entire summer on Cape Cod rather than a few weeks here and a few weeks there. So that was really, really wonderful.
That is awesome. So you're very submerged in the culture, especially the busy summer seasons as well. So more about the book specifically. Do you want to give us a general overview of kind of like what the story is, the book jacket for those who might be interested? So a book about motherhood, and we'll dive into the themes as well. But what's the general overview for people who might be interested?
Sure. It's a story of Harlow Smith, who is a bookstore owner, trivia night obsessed young woman, 35, 36 years old. She has a big, messy family. She's the oldest of five kids. Um, and one day she is shocked and stunned when into her bookstore comes a young man she hasn't seen since the day of his birth. It's her son, the one she placed for adoption when she was 17 years old and a freshman in college. So Matthew kind of explodes her life, and also the lives of his adoptive family, who are summering on the Cape in beautiful Eastham.
It is very interesting. There's a lot of emotion that is put into the book. It's a very dramatic story, but it is also full of a lot of fun. And I've been noticing quite a few jokes as I was just reading through before to kind of get ready for the interviews while brushing up. So you pack out, but there's a lot of local Cape culture that is packed into it, from locations to just the way people speak, or even just the way their day-to-day lives seem to go. How much did you spend maybe researching or homeworking to try and make sure that this book kind of embodied the Cape atmosphere?
Well, one of the great things about my association with the Cape is that it does feel very natural, and I do love to give shout outs to local businesses. Harlow's bookstore is fictional, but also in Wellfleet we have Wellfleet Marketplace and Winslow's Tavern. We've got the Land Ho in Orleans, and the Muse and the Red Inn in P Town. I think that's one of the strengths of my writing, is making character as setting as a character. So the small town nature of Wellfleet, everybody knowing everyone's business and history, everybody weighing in with an opinion on how your life is going, is just something that I really love in writing about small towns. And something that's really special about the Cape too is, the locals and the vacationers, and that sort of symbiotic relationship that we have. A lot of the local businesses support the out of town homeowners, And the out-of-town homeowners love nothing more than pretending they're locals once they cross the bridge. So it was really, really fun to infuse all that into the book, and to give that sense of place. I've had a lot of readers write to me and say, I've been to the Land Ho, or I've been to Provincetown and walked down Commercial Street. And they really love having that kind of grounding sense of, this is a real place and I've visited.
So just to emphasize, as far as I'm aware, this is a work of fiction, but it is full of so many real places that actually exist. Is that important to you in your work in general, or was that something new for this idea of wanting it to be so authentic and concrete, these locations? Did you map out necessarily like, oh, well, I know this restaurant's here versus there? Is that a new project for you? Is that something you've always strived for?
I love to make the setting feel very realistic, and also to give my readers a sense of vacation, that they might not ever get to the Cape or the Finger Lakes region of New York or one of the other settings that I've created. Generally, I fictionalize a town when I'm writing a novel because I might need to play with its geography. I might need there to be a park here or a cemetery there. So I will base my fictional town on a real town, but play with it a little bit. In the case of the Wellfleet books, last year's book, Out of the Clear Blue Sky and A Little Ray of Sunshine, I used the real setting just because, I mean, you can't improve perfection.
I'm noticing a trend with the naming, a very firmament based naming conventions that you go for with Out of Clear Blue Sky and Now a Little Ray of Sunshine.
Mhm.
So as well, how about the characters? Do you tend to pull from real life people that you've met, or aspects from individuals that you've managed to meet throughout your lives as you were waitressing, or as you became an author later? Do you have some people that are facsimiles of others in this novel?
Sometimes, yeah, in this novel, I think everyone's favorite character will be Grandpop, who's the 90-year-old patriarch of the family. And he's very much based on my own two wonderful grandfathers. Um, Oftentimes, a story idea will come to me from a stranger who I'm sitting next to on the train or in the elevator with, and they'll share something about their life. I love talking to people, and I think people find it easy to tell me their stories. So every once in a while, I'll get someone saying, well, actually, I had a child in college and I placed them for adoption. I hope someday to meet them, um, or someone that you might not know in this case is adopted, as is the character of Cynthia in the book, which is not something she likes to broadcast or identify by. So it's oftentimes I'll start with the inspiration of a real life person. And by the time the book is done, that inspiration has become just that, it's a glancing reference to, and the character has taken on a whole different life. But yeah, I think one of the most important things to have as a writer is a great memory. And so I think I do carry a lot of people in my head with me.
I'm sure as a writer it can get a bit crowded up there sometimes. We've spoken with a few authors at this point, and a lot of them have said the same thing of you're one part writing, and then just the other part is just observing the
Mhm.
world. So it's very interesting to hear that being echoed across the sphere, across the industry. So as well, just as a highlight, it talks a lot about this is centered around adoption in a lot of ways that life can go different for some people, especially when you have some surprises that you might not be anticipating. Did you really, is that like I mean, it's a touchy topic. There's a lot of ways that it can go. Did you maybe have to really think about it for some time and really take some time to put yourself in that kind of mind space of what it'd be like to have your life disrupted in that way, or the surprise of a kid you weren't prepared for?
Yeah, whenever I write about an experience that I didn't have, or a career that I didn't have, I try to research it as much as possible. For this book, I did talk to some birth mothers, adoptive parents, and adoptees so that I could represent the issue well. Because one of the things that irritates me as a reader is when a writer hasn't done their research and they present something through real rose-colored glasses. I think, motherhood is very fraught emotionally, no matter how wonderful your children might be and how prepared you think you were as a potential mom. It's full of surprises. It's extremely difficult at times. It's a constant cycle of love and forgiveness and guidance. and then also, irritation and frustration, and I wanted to present a book about the different ways that people can be moms, adoptive parents, and also birth mothers, but also just, kind of the plain old mothers who might not be hitting it out of the park either. I think there's one thing we're guaranteed as moms is that we will screw up our children and they will tell their therapists about us.
I feel like we should probably take the opportunity now for our parents who probably want is I apologize and also thank you profusely, Mama Colhane, for all the all the time that you put in. But it is very interesting as well. So what are some other themes? We talk a lot about motherhood, but are there some themes that you wanted to incorporate into this book that were important that you get across and you think still shine through?
Yeah, I think, the road not taken is certainly a theme in the book, of what if I had made different choices at a different point in my life. And that's true for just about every character, whether they, with Harlow's case to decide to place her baby, or if you had not dated this person, or if you had stayed in law school, or um, if you had asked your parents a question before they died. It's just human nature, I think, to wonder about what life would have been like if you had not done what you did. And I think also there's a theme of your role in the family. Are you the good kid? Are you the troublemaker? Are you the quiet one, the mischievous one, the star, the audience? And that's really explored in this book as well. Carlo is the oldest of five, and she has a certain role of responsible, dutiful, steady child. So when it turns out that she's had a baby that she never told her family about 17 years ago, it really makes everyone need to kind of reassess her, and for her also to reassess herself and her sort of carefully crafted, quiet bookstore owning life.
It is very interesting, and as well. So there's a lot of this. It sounds like also a case of identity and how do you self-identify, and who gets to judge that. Essentially, is it other people who decide your identity or yourself? Um,
Mhm.
so moving forward as well, I wanted to ask you more specifically. There's speaking of observations and taking from the world around you. I did notice that there's a one of the main characters is a Grady Byrne. I just wanted to know, or perhaps you might have gotten such a lovely name from. Was it perhaps a very clever and loquacious radio talk show host, or was
No,
it
I can't say that I wasn't inspired, Grady, but I just, nice Irish name like Grady Byrne and yourself. I names are really important when I write a book. I really have to not just like the name, but feel that it represents that character's personality. And in the book, Grady is a marine biologist, former, high school skinny nerd who was Harlow's friend. And now he's returned to Wellfleet after many years away with a daughter in tow, his 4-year-old daughter. He's divorced and very busy saving the planet. And yeah, I do spend way too much time trying to find the right name for my characters. Always on the baby name websites and looking up who was named what in the year that my characters might have been born, and what names do I like and what kind of nicknames might they have. Grady was once called Gravy in middle school. I'm not sure if that's something that you experienced, Grady.
from specifically my auntie actually as well, who was gravy for the first few years of my life, but the English was her second language, so it's totally for her. But it is interesting. You saw another example of just that authenticity, trying to incorporate as much detail as you can, especially to the naming and to the everything that went on for their birth year, and I'm sure all
Mhm.
events as well.
Yeah.
Speaking of so this is set essentially in modern times, essentially.
Mhm.
Did you
Right.
incorporate things that were going on during certain years when you were trying to get this together?
Well, I didn't, because I like my fiction to be somewhat escapist. I think it's very realistic fiction, but I did not acknowledge the pandemic. I stay away from politics in most cases. Um, so I think that the hardest thing for me to keep up with is how people communicate. If you're 35, 25, 50, 60, are you good at texting? Do you Snapchat with your friends? Which apps do you use? And that's always a bit of a challenge because that stuff seems to change by the half hour.
I can certainly attest to that as a person heavily plugged into the media. So that's why you're going to be on Cape. You're going to be here for July to do a couple of book signings, I believe. Do you want to elaborate more on that for our listeners who might be interested?
Yeah, I will be in East Ham. Well, my town. I'll be
Mhm.
at the library, possibly before or after this airs. And I'll be doing a book signing at Brewster Books, that beautiful bookstore on 6A in let's see, when is that? Uh, July 18th. And then July 27th, I will be at Ocean Edge. Oh, I'm sorry, I'll be at Wequassett Resort with Where the Sidewalk Ends. And one of the things that was so much fun to learn about Grady while writing this book was the power of the independent bookstore and how much they bring to the community. So it's a real joy to be able to support places like Where the Sidewalk Ends or Brewster Bookstore because they work so hard to bring the kind of books that their clientele want to read and to also expand our reading and offer us books that we might not have picked up just by ourselves. So that was so much fun to learn about how busy it is to run a quiet little bookstore.
As it turns out, maybe not as quiet as perhaps we'd all like to wish for.
Exactly. For the consumer, a relaxing afternoon browsing books, and for the staff, constant busyness and 10,000 jobs to do at the same time.
Mm. All the more appreciation for those small bookstores that have survived COVID, and other small businesses as well. All right. Well, thank you so much. That's about all the time that we have, but I appreciate you stopping by, having this conversation with me about your book, A Little Ray of Sunshine, that is out now. Thank you again for joining us for this conversation.
Thank you, Grady. Lovely to speak with you.